All right, we should be live now. I just want to wait 1 second to make sure the audio is coming through and the video is coming through for everybody before I get started into the actual content. So the live stream is about 1 minute behind from when I have a conversation to when you'll see it. So just keep that in mind. So if I ask a question, just kind of let me know about a minute later from when I ask it to when I'll see your response. And so yeah, right now I just want to make sure the audio is working okay and the video is looking good for everybody. And then once we confirm that, we'll get started. Have a lot to cover today, a lot of stuff. Good for you. Okay, we got good audio. Good. How's the video? Everything's in focus. Okay, hold on. It's not happy with the video resolution. 1 second. Guess I'm sending too high of a video bitrate from OBS to YouTube. It's not happy with it. So 1 second. Of course, it won't let me do it while the stream's active. All right, it's looking good. Then we'll move on, regardless of the YouTube being mad at me for the bitrate being a little bit too high. All right, so today's video is kind of more about the holidays coming up and what you can buy for the holidays to get ready, as well as getting into 3D printing can be a little tough at first. Most of it's going to be what do I buy, what printer do I buy, what resin do I buy, and what are some of the extra things that I need. You'll see I've got just a hodgepodge of stuff up here. It's not arranged to be pretty, kind of intentional, just so you can kind of get an idea of, yeah, there's a little bit of entry to get into 3D printing, and it can be intimidating at first until you kind of have a good idea of why all these things exist, what they do, and the use cases in which you need them. So with that one, I guess we'll just get started with, well, the first thing you probably want is a mask. The 3D printers, the masks they come with are just mostly just a piece of paper, really. They're not the proper kind of masks for resin, for 3D printing. And what you really want to get is a mask that's going to cover up your face, both your nose and your mouth. It's going to make good contact, and it's going to have activated carbon filters on it. You need these because these are the only things that can actually pull out the VOCs. Now, if you have filtration, which you need filtration in the room so that you can not allow the buildup, but while you're post-processing, cleaning, that's when most of the VOCs are being released. And wearing this, filtration is not going to actually remove all that in time. So wearing one of these while you're down there kind of working with it, that's where you're really going to protect yourself and your lungs. So this is not optional. You really need to get one of these when you're 3D printing. The next thing you're really going to want is a UV flashlight. This is a rather powerful one. It doesn't need to be this powerful. The reason why I got this one just so when I cure inside the model, it's powerful enough to cure that resin quite quickly and quite effectively. Also, sometimes if I'm just printing a little calibration part, I don't want to take it all the way over and put it in a wash into a cure station. This one I can just hit it real quick and then I can kind of interact with it without interacting with uncured resin. You never want to touch uncured resin at all, and even if your part is cleaned, you don't want to really mess with it with your bare hands unless you cure first. And even after curing it, it might be a good idea to give it one more wash after it's fully cured, just to make sure you can handle it with your bare hands and never have any issues. One thing on that one is that at first you may not have any issues at all. You may be handling resin. You say, I've been handling resin for a long time with my bare hands. It's never been a problem. But so far, I don't know anyone who's done it for so long and hasn't eventually built up a reaction to the resin. And the reaction's pretty bad. And once you get it, I don't think it ever goes away. What the reaction is it can be where you can get kind of itchiness on you. And that's mostly about it on your hands. You'll just get really itchy, but it can last for a while. So you just don't want to get there. That seems to be about the worst for your skin, is just it can be really itchy and irritating. But if you just put on gloves and you cure your stuff, you never have to worry about that pretty much ever, and resin 3D printing becomes pretty safe. extra FEP is a question I see all the time, and what I found out is if I buy it in a roll like this instead of the sheets, I can get more out of it and it's a lot cheaper. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of put it on the vat, just in a nice big sheet, just kind of roll it out. I'll cut it, and then after I bolt it all in, I'll come back with a razor blade and I'll just trim off the sides, and that's a really quick way to get a lot of, I forget what it's called, the film, the protective film on your vat, and not have to really keep doing sheets and keep buying those sheets that can be more expensive. Now there's multiple types of sheets, and some of them only come in single squares. This one you'll see is kind of, it's not very transparent. And this is the ACF film. This one comes in sheets because it has to have a protective film that you peel off, a blue protective film. And the reason for that one being is because there's a texture on this one. The texture faces down, and so that one comes in sheets, but the other end FEP or regular FEP comes in, you can buy it in rolls like this, and I would recommend that. Moving on, a spray bottle full of IPA. This is a very much need. I use this for when I pull my prints directly off the build plate. I'll give them a quick squirt, and then I'll go into the cleaning process. The reason why I do this, and it's also good just to have to clean your area. I use these silicone mats. This is also something you need. When I'm finished and you want to clean it off, you just kind of squirt it there and remove it with a paper towel, and then you can just cure it and throw that mess away in the trash can with your UV flashlight. It also removes most of the resin from your prints, so when you put them into your IPA, they're not completely drenched in resin, and this will really preserve the life of your IPA for a lot longer just with a simple spray bottle. And you really don't use much IPA. It takes a while to even go through a small bottle like this. All right, I've got two filters here, and the reason why I have two filters here is because resin bottles don't come with the same size lid. You've got resin that comes with a very small lid, with a very small opening, and some with a much larger lid. And and Triatech has a really good resin with a much larger lid as well. And so this guy, which I prefer, the nice big one, because I can put in here and not make a mess, won't fit in these smaller bottles. So having a smaller one to fit is, well, you're going to need it to pour the resin back into the bottle, or you're going to make a big mess. These are just ones I bought in a kit on Amazon just for like automotive car, and they're really great because they have this kind of lip on it where I can just kind of let it sit there and hang the vat, or even if I'm combining and mixing resins, you can just set it there and it'll hold it. These are really nice. And a must need. All right, and a few more things that you're going to need is some super lube. This lube you're going to use on a couple things. One, you're going to use it to kind of perform maintenance on your 3D printer, as well as I use it on the screws, which I'll go over that a little bit later. But yeah, this is, if you don't perform maintenance on your 3D printer, it may work great at first, but over time it's going to start working less and less and less, and you'll have more and more errors. This is a good thing. Yeah, you can substitute alcohol or IPA with other cleaners. It's kind of depending on where you're at. So in some places in the world, IPA is really, really expensive, and denatured alcohol is really cheap. Where I live, IPA is really cheap, and denatured alcohol is really expensive. So it kind of depends on where you live, but they're both going to work just fine. The one thing that I necessarily don't enjoy very much is water. Water washable resins or water, and the reason for that being is that it's hard to dispose of the water. It's also hard for the water, it takes a long time for the water to be pulled out of your print. Resin is porous and it will absorb water. It'll absorb the IPA as well, but it pulls out really, really quickly with a heat gun. I have a heat gun for that reason exactly. I will clean my prints, and when they're completely clean, I'll hit them with a heat gun for two things. One, it's going to soften up the supports and make them really easy to remove, but also instead of the water method, I'm not putting them in water that's going to absorb into the resin. I'm actually removing any IPA from it and warming up the print right before I finally cure it. Because you never want to cure resin that is wet or overly saturated or still has the supports on it, because they're going to come off really, really awful. So yeah, heat gun is one of them for that reason. All right, and I'll have links for all these things later on where you can get them if you choose to. Unaffiliated links, these are just things that I found that I found to be really, really helpful. Some of these items I've used multiple versions, and I found through versions I didn't like, the ones I do like. What I'm showing you here are the ones that I really do like. Of course, you come with a scraper that comes with the printer. This is a must need, but I mostly only use this these days to clean off the build plate. I have a build plate here. So what I use to clean off my prints from the build plate is this little one. And this little one is fantastic. It's going to remove without really being able to scratch the build plate. It's not sharp, but it's thin and it still bends. This is the best thing. And so the downside of it is that when you remove it, you're not really scraping off any bits that still might be on there. So I'll take this one and just real quickly do that, just to make sure that it's clean and free from anything, and that way I know I'm ready for my next print. At least that there's nothing stuck on the build plate that's going to go down into the vat and possibly damage the film on the bottom. Which gets me into this guy. This guy is really great because it's a squeegee, and it's pretty funny. Let's see. Let's pull up this vat here. This is the vat from my Saturn. And what I like about the squeegee is that if you imagine this is full of resin, and you're just running it across it, you're going to get most of the entire FEP in one go, where you're going to pull off any resin that's fallen out on it, as well as check if there's anything stuck to it before you send your build plate home, which could, destroy your printer. So this is a must-need. This is a new one I've been testing out with. Maybe you're familiar with the blue one that I've kind of showed off. This is one I've started using more recently because, one second. It also works on little tiny build plates, like this one from the Saturn 8KS, where you can just turn it on the side and do the same thing. Almost the entire width of it is covered in one, and then you can kind of mix it all up. And it's great, and it works for all of the above, and really easy to clean off when you're done. So this is highly recommended. The next thing, and again I'll have links to all these, is this little, it's like a fish tank thermometer. I don't know how well you can see it. I put these on my vat, and I put them on the cover. The reason why I do that one is so I can see kind of the temperature around the cover, and I can see the temperature of the vat itself, because that's going to be pretty accurate to what the resin is. The resin is going to transfer, the resin does transfer heat really, really well. And of course, being a metal vat is going to transfer that as well. And I found this to be off by so little it doesn't really matter. And that way I can monitor my temperatures of what's going on while I'm printing. And you see, I've got them on pretty much all of them. They're really nice. Acetone. I've never tried acetone before, so I actually don't know whether it works or not. And it also depends on the price. Maybe I could imagine it being a little bit oily and leaving a residue that you don't want, but it would be interesting to see if it works in this for like the first spray. But I do think acetone might actually damage your latex and might cause it to bubble up. I don't know about that one, but something to think about or test on a piece of this where you don't really care. Let's see here. Just going over the questions real quick. All right. Next thing is heat. This is funny. I've just got this little egg heater that I buy off Amazon. There's other ones that go around the vat. I don't have one. I have one, but I can't show it now because it's on a printer that's currently running a print. Otherwise, I would have had it out. Sorry. But between them, I actually kind of like this one the best. I mount it up on the case, just kind of out of the way, make sure when the build plate rises up, it won't hit it. I like this one because it's kind of a set it and forget it. It's got auto turn off. You can adjust the temperature. And instead of putting the heat right next to the resin down here, it's going to heat up the entire chamber, which means it's also going to keep the print and the area hot. Because when your print is sitting there hanging up, while printing up here, you do want the resin to fall off of it, because when you go to clean it, it'll be a little bit better. And also you just want the resin to flow really well. And it being a little bit warmer in the chamber, I've noticed does a little bit better job overall than just heating up the vat itself. However, heating up the vat itself is still absolutely leaps and bounds ahead of no heat at all and just hoping that the temperature is good enough. And you really want to be printing at about 25 degrees Celsius or above, and probably not really above 30. Some resins can do okay as you get higher, especially like some of these fast resins can do okay, and some more of the build resins. But if you're going up to some specialty resins, that 30 can really cause what's called cross-curing. And cross-curing is when the UV light penetrates through the layer being cured up above to the layers previously cured and starts to pillow them out. And too much heat can kind of help with that. So about 25 to 30 is where you want to be. Let's see. An external air compressor to kind of blow off the prints. I've been wanting to try one of those. I haven't yet. What I have works really well, but I would like to get a big bucket. I could put my stuff in there, just kind of blow it off first and see how that works to preserve the life of my IPA, but something I haven't tested yet. All right. Moving on. And then the last thing is this, this may be silly, but the glue right here. I use this glue to assemble my models when I'm done. I have tested a few glues, and this one seems to work just the best. There might be ones that work better, but it's just this Loctite gel. It's really easy to put little tiny bits on and not put too much, because if you're doing this nice print, the last thing you want to do is get glue squishing out everywhere and ruin it. And I found that generally my prints will break, not where the glue is, but break somewhere else. So it's a pretty good glue. And then something that we definitely all need, which is a good pair of digital calipers. This is a additive manufacturing. It's in the title. And so trying to kind of wing it can work okay depending on what you're printing. If you're printing miniatures, it's going to be okay. But when you start printing bigger stuff or stuff that has to be assembled like this, which was many, many parts, making sure that the prints that come out of your vat or off your printer are what you expect them to be in the slicer. So everything is dimensionally accurate. Everything's going to assemble real well. I've seen more than a few prints where they don't go together. There's big gaps, and you have to use putty or something else to kind of sculpt them back out. Personally, I'm not an artist. I don't know how to sculpt in a 3D program or in real life. So it either has to be perfect when it's there, or I'm kind of lost on what to do next. It's a fail for me. So having some of these to kind of calibrate everything and make sure everything's good to go, very, very important. And they're cheap. Highly recommend to have a pair of digital calipers, FDM and resin. All right, I think that's it for the, oh no. A few more things. An apron. I have ruined more than a few clothes by not having an apron. So right now I just keep this for I'm printing, just a really cheap apron, throw it on, and it's great to make sure I stop ruining clothes. I usually don't splash resin very often, but when I do, that's the end of it. And here's one thing, it's kind of a request more than something you need. I mean, you need it. There's types of tapes that you can buy, and it's a very thin tape, and I don't have any with me, sorry, or I'd show you, but there is a thin black tape that you can buy that is what's used on your 3D printers. And I'll show you later when I pull up the 3D printers where that goes. I know some people watching the stream might not have an idea about what I'm talking about, but when I get to the next segment of this one, you'll have a better idea. I haven't found a place where I can buy these kind of ready to go like this one, so that I don't have to put tape in strips around it where they can kind of double up. Because wherever the tape gets thicker, you can run into issues with inaccuracy. So if there's anything like that out there where you can buy these or someone knows how to make them, there's a business idea for you. Find out the common sizes and start printing or plotting these out so we can buy them and have them in stock if we ever need to replace our screen, or more often replace the screen protector that goes underneath this. Or I've also just seen that over time and heat, they tend to bubble or crinkle. So every once in a while, you'll just replace it without replacing the screen or the screen protector. So these are a little bit more consumable than I think people realize they are. So having some extra on hand or being able to buy like a 5-pack would be really, really nice. Right now, I just use the tape because I can't seem to find these in all the different sizes that we need for all the printers. And then last is a screen protector. These are my favorite kind of screen protectors, the ones that kind of go underneath the tape and that are flat. The reason why I like having these kind is the further away you get from the LCD. So some of those screen protectors that cover the whole thing, they do degrade some of the accuracy of your print. And some of these printers we're buying now are like 8K, 12K, and I hear there might be 14Ks coming soon, which is crazy. It seems weird to me to purchase that kind of quality and then not use it by using some extra products that might actually reduce that. So it's not the way it works, but you could almost think of it as if you buy a 12K screen, you're really getting 8K or 6K out of it if you're using some other products that can filter the light and just make it not as clear when you're actually making your print. So these are good to have, and you can buy these in kind of packs for your printers. They're very nice. Because I mean, eventually we all make a mistake, and you might get a little resin on the screen, and it gets damaged. And if you've got a screen protector, instead of having to replace a $150 or $400 screen, you just replace the screen protector and you're good to go. So, all right. Now we'll pull up the printers and kind of give you an idea of what I look for in a printer. And this is more going to be about why I pick certain printers I pick. And I could sit here and tell you buy this printer, buy this printer, buy this printer, but that's not really going to do you any good because it's going to be more helpful to see why I say to look at these particular printers. So with that, let's get started with one of my favorite little printers, which is the Mini 8KS. You'll also notice I got a piece of tape on there. The reason for that tape is because when your VAT is on, you put a piece of tape there, and if you take this guy off, and when I take it off, I kind of do this, and I pull it off, and hold on, I can even zoom in on that for a second. One moment. There you go. All right, so I put a piece of tape there, and you'll also see that there's this black tape right here. That's the tape I was talking about earlier that you put around your screen. And what I do is I just get a piece of FEP, and I cut it into a square, and then I cover it up with that tape. That way, if I've got dirty fingers or drip comes down, it's not going to get in my LCD or damage my LCD. I put a piece of blue tape here to same thing. When this thing's coming off and it drips here, and it might run down and get underneath the vat. It can't anymore because there's a piece of blue tape. It's cheap, and I just replace it every so often. But why I like what I look for in a printer is one, I'm looking for a kind of a sturdy printer. So a little bit of weight to it. The reason for that being is when your build plate is going up and down like this, it's putting a lot of force on the tower. So this tower could actually bend like this. And if the tower is bending, then what that can do is, well, you have to lift higher because the tower is bending down when you're lifting. So if it's going up, the tower might bend in. And so you might have to add an extra millimeter or two to your lift height if the printer's not solid. So you actually get faster prints out of a better, more solidly built printer. And you also get just better quality in our layer lines. The next thing I'm always looking for is something that's really easy to level. This one's got a really good kind of build quality where these two little things I can put my fingers on where I can level it so I can put even pressure on it. There's some printers where there's like no gap here or anything to do with it. It's really hard to level because you have to try to get your fingers all around it. It's easier if you could actually play with the printer first and just kind of learn it, but it's hard to see unless you can, I don't know, it's hard to notice until you can play with it, but just know this thing is very, very easy to level. I also really like small printers, especially like to have a small printer and maybe a bigger printer. The reason for that is if I'm doing tiny things, having a big build plate with lots of resin that dumps off when you pull it off and a lot to clean up is just a lot to do when you only want to do like a small print, mini or a face or figure. So just having something like this in your arsenal is very good. Next thing I look for is a metal vat with a clean polish on it. There are some metal vats, and I can show you some a little bit, that have a texture to them. Those are hard to clean off if you're using paper towel, which I do use paper towels to clean these off, but not the FEP. I use a different kind of paper towel for that one. It'll kind of pull off the fuzzies, and they're just harder to clean. Having one that's got a nice flat surface on it is something to look for in a 3D printer. A nice good screen on it with a good firmware. This screen's a little bit small, of course the printer's small, but obviously the bigger the screen, the better it's easy to push, but it's not a big gripe. You can always use your pinky or one of the Allen wrenches to manipulate it. The next thing is the light source, which I can't really show you, but the light source is what generates the UV light that goes up. A better quality printer will have a better quality light source, which will create a better quality print, a more consistent print. With a bad light source, if you print something on the build plate on this corner versus this corner, one can be blurry or like bloomed out and kind of ugly, and the one could be underexposed and not print. So usually higher quality printers will have better light sources. And so of course I'll do printer recommendation in a little bit, and the ones I'm going to recommend are ones that don't have these issues. Next thing is just a good screw, good quality screw, and good quality rail system. That kind of goes down with just being a well-built printer that's going to produce fast, high-quality prints without layer lines and less failure. So here's my example of a Small 3D printer. All right. Moving to a big printer that I enjoy quite a bit. Kind of the only printer I've ever done. Sorry, that's the wrong one. That's the M3 Ultra. This is the M5S. The M5S is Anycubic's kind of version into the current version into the mid-size printer. This printer has a lot of very nice things about it, but I would say the nice things about it are more into the software and less into the chassis. It still has a very nice, very high polished VAT on it, but this also comes with that ACS film, that a little bit blurry. 1 second, let me pull up the chat. And they do have really nice build plates with very solid. This particular build plate doesn't need to be leveled. This is something that I would caution to kind of stay away from. There's 2 printers right now in the consumer market that do auto leveling. It's this one and the GWDO. The other printer has the Uniform. It has the ability to do some leveling, so it can be mitigated, but this one necessarily it doesn't. So what I would recommend, I do think the M5 is a very good printer, but I would go with the M5 and not the M5S because of the auto leveling system. But the M5S, with some of that smart software, has some really cool stuff about it. One being this will auto detect a failure, which is, I've had that happen, it works. The next thing is if you lose power, it will restart the print when power is restored. There might be other printers that do that, but I don't know. If you know about them, let me know. This is the only one I know that it will restore the print or start the print over if power is lost. That right there is worth quite a bit, and I wish that's something all printers would do, but right now it's the only one I know of that does it. Other than that, it's a 12K printer. It's a little bit light. I mean, it's a little bit light. It's really light. So it's for build quality on the chassis. I would say they did a smart thing here. It is very light and easy to use, but they kind of beefed it up where it was important. So even though it's a light printer, it's a solid printer. So I mean, everything except for the auto leveling system, I do enjoy about it, which is where I would say I would recommend the M5 over the M5S, just because of the auto leveling can be a little bit buggy at times. And here's a 3D printer that is built a little different than any of the ones I've showed you. This is the Saturn III Ultra, which has a small brother, the Saturn III. What's kind of unique about this guy is it's really built to be a little bit tougher. It's quite a bit heavier and quite a bit beefed up with the ball bearing screw. It's got the same 12K screen that the M5 and 5S or the Saturn III has. It's just kind of beefed up to be a little bit more solid. They moved away from the ball joint. It's now a 4-post mounting system, which is a lot more stable. So things that I would kind of try to stay away from when you're looking for a new 3D printer. One, again, a plastic vat that's hard to clean and hard to work with. The ball joint kind of printers, they can be okay on the Mars series, where the Mars is a smaller printer, like the first one I showed, the 8KS. But when it gets big, it's just too much leverage on the sides for one ball right there, where the mount points there, where these ones kind of come out and they'll mount more on the sides. And I had the vat for that guy. I thought I had the build plate for it. Oh, right here. Yeah, so you've got a much better 4-point system on the build plate, where it's just a lot more solid. This thing, to throw it, once it's level, it's going to stay level for pretty much forever. And it's just, overall, it's a really good printer to work with, very solid. You can do you can do fast prints, because it's built so well. This tower is very, very solid, very thick. So that's what I like in a printer. I like to go over build quality over kind of anything. This also has a very good light source in it, so it's kind of part where the between corner to corner or center to corner, the UV light that comes out of this thing is quite consistent. All right, and real quick, resins. I've got a lot of resins. I just grabbed a few of them that I kind of am playing with and I enjoy. There's also my favorite, which is the Tri-Tech Navy Gray, which I mix with the Tenacious. The Navy Gray is still to this day the most accurate resin I've ever used, but it's because it's so accurate, it can be a tiny bit brittle. So when you mix that Tenacious, which is a rubber resin, very flexible, you lose a tiny bit of accuracy, but you gain some more durability. This is what I would use just for like my, like a print like this one or minis. It's a very good print for that. If I wanted to print something that needed to be a little bit more structural, I've been playing around with this this conjured resin. And it's also very accurate and very strong and very structural. It's very easy to print with, so something I would definitely recommend. And it's also quite cheap. But this would be more for maybe some bigger models or something where you really do need it to be a little bit stronger. Let's see here. What is the best? What is the best printer for the for big figures? It depends on how big of a figure you're talking about. If you're talking about something like this size, or how well you can. Let's see here. If you're talking about some of these, the ones over here like that size, these are all printed. Those big ones are printed on a 8K 10-inch printer, like the Saturn size. So you can do pretty big if they're broken up. If you're trying to print something that's that big, you're going to have to go to a large format printer. And in the last segment of this live stream, I'll show a slide of some of the printers I recommend that I don't have, so I can't show you specifically. And I've got some big ones there as well. Just know that the big printers and big prints are quite a bit more difficult, so I would start with something medium or small and work your way into a big printer. Just because, like I said, the huge build plates, the forces involved just go up. Resin, you're printing something solid out of liquid. It can be a little bit challenging at first, and you're going to make mistakes. And making mistakes on something that's small and easy to work with is fantastically easier than making a mistake on something that's really, really big and a lot more expensive. Let's see. All right, kind of moving down to the resin line. Frozen has this is also a very, very accurate resin. I'd say it's pretty much on par with the navy gray. It's a little bit brittle as well, so same thing, you add a little bit of tenacious into it, or another flexible resin, and you're gonna have a resin that looks very, very beautiful with a little bit more durability. But just this by itself, I would say this is a great resin if you want to take pictures without painting it. They also have their red clay version of this, same thing. Beautiful pictures, incredibly brittle. I wouldn't use that resin for something you're going to play with or manipulate. It's just something if you want to really make a showpiece that you're going to put under protective glass, because it's going to look really, really good. And then the ABS Pro 2 from Anycubic. This is very on par with the Rigid here. Very strong resin. Both of these are easy to work with. I enjoy printing them. There's some resins, they print well, but they don't clean well, or they warp. I'm not showing those resins here. I do have some of them. I'm showing you the resins that I recommend going after. But yeah, these two for the same purpose. You need something that's going to be more at manufacturing, a little stronger. You want minis you're going to ship, and they need to survive the shipment. I would look at these two, or the Tenacious mix in with the navy gray. See if there's any questions here real quick before I move on to the last. Lychee team, how do I work with? Here's one is, how do I work with resins in my work? What do I use to clean an acetone? That's kind of answered that one before. That's just using a good wash and cure station, making sure that whatever's cheap for you, whether it's IPA or denatured alcohol, is that you can try the acetone, but I don't know about that one. I've not tried it. Can you mix different resins? Yes, I mix resins all the time. It's a little bit experimental. You don't know what's going to happen, and you always have to calibrate, because you want to make sure you're using the right speeds, the right light off delays if it's a really thick resin, and you want to make sure that UV exposure time is where it needs to be, just to make sure that, well, you're going to get successful prints, and that they're not going to be bloomed out. If you use, it's surprising, it's chemistry. It's surprising how much 10% of a very different resin can really change your exposure settings, where you go from beautiful to either failure or blown out and it looks like a marshmallow man. But yes, I mix resins all the time, and you can create some really kind of fun mixtures with that one. But I wouldn't recommend that for a new user unless it's something that it's already pre-formulated, like that navy gray with 15% tenacious. That's easy to mix, and it's already kind of dialed in for you. But if you're doing your own, I wouldn't recommend as a new 3D printer to mess with that. All right. One second. All right, so let's start at the beginning of this guy. All right, so what I want to do real quick on this one is just kind of give an idea of, or show you some good deals going on with some of the resins that I've talked about right now. Tritech has a pretty good deal going on right now, 25% off. Of course, it depends on where you're at. Unfortunately, they seem to never have the navy gray on sale, but keep an eye on that one. If you just go to their website, thetritech.com, you'll find these deals. Again, I really, really love their navy gray, one of my favorite resins on the market. They also have some of the best casting resin. If you plan on getting into casting, their casting resin is phenomenal. Frozen has some pretty fun Christmas resins going on right now. If these green and red ones, if you haven't seen them, when you put a heat gun on them, they change color and kind of balloon out. That's why that green or that red has that dark red or that light red. It's because they put a heat source on it. And this is new for Frozen. They have a new engineering grade resin. I haven't used it yet, but from what I've seen some of the specs, it seems like it might be pretty much on par with the other ones that I showed, which is the version 2 of the ABS and the Conjure. If it matches up with those ones, it would be a fantastic one, but you can also buy it in 5 kilogram. And it's on sale right now. Anycubic's got some of their deals, same thing for the Tough and the Craftsman. Two resins that I enjoy. They're I'd say the best of their bunch. I've tried out a lot of Anycubic. These are the two that I would recommend to actually use, the ones that I like. They're water washables. I would stay away from them, but these ones are good resins, and you got a couple good prices on those ones. All right, so now I guess we're kind of more into the meat of this, and that is what should you get for each printer? What's my recommendation in each category? And this, of course, is the small printers. These are 3 small printers which have some pretty different price ranges, but it also depends on what's really important to you, and from 3 different manufacturers. Starting from kind of let's start with the Mono. The Mono is kind of like that really perfect, how do I know if I'm going to get into this and I'm really going to enjoy it? It's a 4K screen on a little screen, so you've got a pretty good resolution, because the resolution is, of course, is how many pixels on the size of a screen. You could take a 4K screen, put it on a 12-inch, a 4K resolution, put it on a 12-inch screen. It's not going to look very good. Put it on a little 6.6 inch, and it's going to look pretty good. The Frozen Mini AKS, I have one. I showed you to that earlier. That's one of the most accurate printers on the market. So if you really just want a small printer that's incredibly accurate, and you're going to get some of those beautiful prints, highly recommend that one. And then next to it is the Mars 4 Ultra 9K. This one is pretty much a direct competitor to the Frozen Mini AKS. They're both going to be so. The difference in accuracy between these two is unnoticeable in the human eye, but just to say, they're fantastic. And I would say these are definitely for the users who really want to do minis and have the best possible quality on those minis. But one thing to keep in mind, if that's why you're buying it, is for that high accuracy, you're going to want to calibrate yourself down to about 30 layer height. And you're going to want to really calibrate in. Otherwise, these pixels are so small, you're going to just blow that out, and you're not even going to notice it. So something to keep in mind about these little high accuracy ones. All right, into the medium, the M3, the Mighty 4K, and the Saturn S 4K. These are still in the cheaper price range, but what I'd say, you're getting into it, and you want a printer that's kind of maybe a little bit older, but tested to be reliable and proven and to be good. These are the 3. They're all 4K printers. The screens on these things are $50 a pop if you have to replace it. The printers are all relatively most the same price, of course, Frozen being a little bit more expensive. And that's mostly because that's that build quality. Frozen, they don't have very many printers, but the ones they do push out are a little bit just thicker, heavier, a little bit higher quality built. And so if you're looking for that, that's where you go Frozen. The Anycubic and the Saturn, a little bit cheaper, still very good printers. But yeah, that's why I'd recommend on that one. Now notice on that one, on the Saturn S 4K, it still has that ball joint. So know if that's your choice. That ball joint is going to be a little bit harder to level and come out of level a little bit more often than, let's say, the Mighty 4K or the Frozen M3. But if you know how to interact with it, you know how to level it, you know how to take the prints off, it won't be much of an issue. Large printers. So this is where, I wouldn't recommend getting into this one unless you have one of the other ones and you've used it for 6 months or more. These printers are really fun because they're just massive things you can print. They they're getting a lot cheaper. These things used to be $3,000 when I first got into this, and we're looking at under 1,000 or under 1,500. And yeah, if you're doing like, even if you have tons and tons of minis and you just want to fill the build plate up, they're getting higher resolution, much higher build quality, much more consistent, and these are the three that I would highly recommend. Of course, one being the Max. There's actually a deal right now, Derek 70. You get $7 discount off that $849. That's good until December 31st. The Frozen Sonic Mega AKS. That's a new printer they just released. It's kind of it's a revamp of the original Mega, which was much more expensive and a little bit bigger and bulkier. That is, even though it's significantly cheaper, the build quality, I would say, matters most where it needs to be, and they've made it a little bit cheaper where it doesn't matter. A very good blend of where you put your money. And the Jupiter SE, same thing. It's much, much cheaper than the original Jupiter, but they put the money where it needs to be and kind of made some of the other parts a little bit cheaper to bring that price point down. But all very good printers, and between the three of them, I couldn't say which one I would recommend the most, just because the price ranges are so different. Like if I had the budget, I'd go for the Mega 8KS, but if I'm trying to save some money, between the Jupiter and the Max, it's kind of a toss-up between the two. You got 6K versus 7K, 12-inch screen versus 13-inch screen, so the UM is going to be about the same. It's just, they're slightly different, and so it's whatever one fits you the best. Now we're getting to some specialty printers. I think everyone might know that I like the Saturn III Ultra 12K quite a bit. I would say right now it has a few teething issues at this moment. So if you get one, join our Discord and you can ask what those teething issues are, and I can kind of explain it. Once you know them, you know how to avoid them, but they'll probably be completely gone here very soon, within the next month. Then you don't have to worry about it anymore. And those teething issues are just software. Nothing to do with the hardware. The hardware is solid. It's a well-built printer that is going to last a long time and give you good quality prints for a long time. And this is kind of like a good mention of one that's not one of these three. The GK TWO is a solid printer, especially with its price point. It has one thing I would say I'm not too happy about, and that's that auto leveling system. But like I said, it's got the ability to kind of adjust it to an extent. Other than that, it is a very high quality printer. Highly recommend it for anyone who has kind of been doing it for a while, and you're into the industry, and you're kind of ready to move to something maybe a little bit more expensive, but a little bit higher quality. The M5S, I kind of talked about that one earlier. It's a good printer. Like I said, I only have one gripe about it. Other than that one gripe, that auto leveling system, the S stands for smart, it just stands for smart. And the smartness of this printer is, I would say, it's a good step. It's the step in the right direction, and I want to see some of that intelligence come to more printers. And there's one other mention that's not on here, and it's the, you can still buy it, it's the Anycubic, the Mono X 6K. I think it's on sale right now. I would highly, if you're getting into it and you're looking for a 6K printer that's medium sized, that's my first printer I ever had. It's surprising that it's still for sale. I loved it. It's to this day one of my favorite printers I've ever used, and you can still buy it, so I'd look at that one as well. All right, let's get that. All right, let's turn it over to kind of questions. Let me pull up the questions real quick, and we'll go on from there. Oh, sorry, the website was zoomed in. I didn't notice that. Hopefully you can get see it. I will share that later on, along with all the links for the stuff I described. So that way, if it was not the best stream, I apologize for that. You should be able to kind of go through that later on. Okay, what kind of resin would I recommend without hurting your wallet? Yeah, I would actually recommend the Conjure resin. It's pretty cheap, and it's pretty good resin. So if you're looking for like a fairly cheap resin, this is the one I would recommend. All right, let's see if there's any more questions on anything, really. It doesn't have to be about the current topic. It can be anything that I covered or anything else you've been kind of itching to know. That's I'm trying to think of something I can cover while I'm waiting for some questions to come in. What did I mean by the Saturn III Ultra software problem? Yeah, we'll open that up a little bit. So originally, with its original firmware, it had some issues with the speed limits. You'd put in, it didn't matter what slicer you used, you'd put in a speed and the printer would do a different speed. I did a review and I did cover this. As of recently, they have updated that, that problem away, but introduced a new problem with the slicer, where right now on the Saturn III Ultra, if you slice as dot, this is a kind of unique printer. It has two ways you can actually send a slice to the printer. And for those who don't know, a slice is you take a 3D file, you put it like in Lychee Slicer, and what you get out is a slice, which is a picture stack with code of how to manipulate it. And for the Saturn III, you can do .goo or .ctb. .ctb being the file format for the manufacturer of one of the chipsets, but that printer also has a Linux chipset in it, and with that one you can use the .goo or .goo. With .goo, originally there was a few issues with size. That's mostly been addressed, but with .ctb right now, when they came out with that patch that fixed the speed limit issues, right now on the .ctb it doesn't do TSMC, which is where your printer will go. If I had the build plate, TSMC, that's when at first you'll go slow. When you're coming off of the, let's pretend my hand's the FEP. When you're first pulling off, you'll go slow. You do this so that the print doesn't, to reduce the amount of force on the print. So you go slow at first, and you'll go up high enough to where 90% of your layers have released from the film. Then you'll go fast. And you do fast as insurance. This insurance is just to make sure that that extra 10% releases. And this is what we call TSMC. It's multi-stage. And so right now with that bug, it will only do the first stage and then go back down. And the problem with this is if that first stage isn't high enough lift, well, you're just going to get a failed print, because if that doesn't release from the print doesn't release from the film, it's just going to come back down and recure that same layer. You're not going to create the next layer, and eventually it's just going to fail and you'll have a completely damaged print. So that's the issue with right now. So right now, if you just use the .goo with it, it's not an issue. The patch to fix that should probably be out within the next couple weeks or month at the longest. I've tested it with Lychee, Box, USB, Wi-Fi, CTB, and .goo. I've with TSMC and without TSMC, so I've done a lot of testing on it with that printer. And it is right now specific only to the .ctb file format. Is it better one or two wash and cure or split? So the question on that one is it better to have the wash and cure as one station or as two? Two. And it's also better to have more than one wash and cure station. So the way I do it is I have a bucket. Well, I first have my spray bottle. I'll spray my print. And then I have a bucket I will dip it into. And that bucket is just a glass jar where I do my printing. So like I have a pad just like this where I do it, and that glass jar is just right here in the corner. I'll dip it real quick, just kind of set it here. This gets off most of the resin. Then I'll just knock it off, and then I'll go to a normal wash station. My wash stations, I have more than one clean IPA that I kind of go through, eventually to a clean IPA, and then I'm done. I do this so that way that first bucket is the one that takes up most of the resin, and then as I progress, I have less and less. This allows me to save the amount of IPA by the life of it by quite a bit. So that last bucket pretty much stays perfectly clean, but I'm always giving my resin, my prints, one more perfectly clean IPA bath before I dry them off and cure them. This makes it so that I always have a perfectly clean and beautiful print, despite the fact that my very first one has got about an inch thick of resin at the bottom because I never clean it. So from there to there, it goes from like an inch thick of resin to completely clean, and I don't have to really change it very often. Like, if I have to replace the second one every 6 months, I have to replace this one every year, and replace this one a year and a half. Mostly I'm just refilling them because of some small evaporation that happens. They really don't get dirty. The reason why you want them separate between the cure station is that if you have any IPA that gets on the cure station, dirty, kind of clean, or your resin gets on there and of course you run your cure station, it's going to make a mess of your cure station. And I think it's just better to have them separated out. That way you can have an area where you're doing your washing and you've got this perfectly clean print, and then you go cure it. Well, clean and dry, and then you go cure it. So I don't really like the combination ones, and I don't like the big bucket that you put them on that has the thing that spins. The reason for that is all the sediment of the resin that fell out is going to collect on the bottom. When that thing spins, it spits it all up, and these little tiny bits of resin are going to cling to your model. And unless you take it out and you start scrubbing them or somehow get them off, that's kind of just stuck to your model now, and it's not going to look very good. So leaving the sediment where it belongs down below helps you preserve the life of that IPA, and it keeps your resin's prints clean. I know when I was using the wash and cure station, I feel like I always had to be filtering or cleaning that IPA. Now, cleaning IPA, filtering IPA is something I only do once a year, even though I print a lot, or maybe twice a year. So it's really kind of out of state, out of mind. All right, would Lychee default settings be good to start when printing on the Mars Pro 2? Yeah, okay, so default settings or settings you find online, how good are they? Should you use them? Well, I'll describe that question. I wouldn't. The default settings are designed to get you a successful print, which is good, but they're not designed to get you a print for a calibrated print, something that's going to actually make use of that 12K, 8K printer you just bought, or maybe you spent a little bit more money on a higher quality resin and you want to get that out of it. That's going to require calibration. And so on that one, what I do is you can either go fast or you can go slow, and fast is going to get you prints really quickly, and that's not the wrong answer. Depending on what you're printing, that can be the right answer. But if you're buying high HD resin, 8K resin, 12K resin, you're buying 8K, 12K printers, you probably were going for quality. On that one, there's no way around about it. You're going to have to go slow. Yes, the new ACF film promotes fast, but it only promotes fast lifting, not going back down, not light off delay, which is required to let the printer and the resin kind of settle. All those things still take time, and an ACS film doesn't remove any of that. An ACS film also can blur your prints just a tiny bit because I showed you earlier, it's a textured, and a pigment has got a white kind of a blurriness to it. That's like taking a projector and putting a fog over it. It's not going to have the highest resolution anymore. So it's speed or quality. And the only way to get that most quality is to calibrate on your own. So what I would do is if you just want to test to make sure your printer's going well, those settings are great for that. But when you start to calibrate, you're probably going to end up slowing down that printer, adding about 2 seconds light off delay. And I use light off delay as a global statement, and depending on the slicer you're using or the printer, it could be called wait before print or wait after retract. It's the same thing. About 2 seconds for that, you're going to have a much higher quality print. And then from there, you're going to use calibration parts to adjust your UV exposure. And that's where you're going to determine when that resin's hard enough or cured enough in order to support the model. All right. Sorry, I'm just reading the comments right now. What would be the parameters of standard resin on the Anycubic M5S printer? Yeah, it's kind of back to what I was talking about, that speed. M5S and even the Saturn III Ultra are promoted as fast printers because that ACF film in them. And it's kind of the same thing. You can print fast with those ones, but your quality is going to be damaged just a little bit. At least it doesn't matter the film on it. Ultrasonic cleaning. I do have an ultrasonic cleaner. I use that for my last step. And of course that comes with a warning. If you just run pure IPA in it, there is a fire warning with that one. So use at your own risk. There are ways you can do this without risking fire. That's where you fill it up with water and you'll use a plastic bag that has the IPA in it, or some sort of a container. So you'll put your prints in the IPA, or whatever cleaning fluid. I'm using IPA as a general term. Earlier we discussed different solutions. Use what's affordable in your area. Put your cleaning solution in there, and then contain that inside the water. that point there's no risk of fire, but you are dramatically reducing the size and capacity of your ultrasonic cleaner. I've been using ultrasonic cleaner as my final print for, or my final clean for a little over a year now, and it's worked beautiful. It's worked great. I've always really enjoyed it. All right, we're at the 3 o'clock mark, which I would say we're about end of the stream. I started a little bit late, so we'll have maybe a little bit more time for a few questions to come in. But if there's no more questions, we will button up the stream and let y'all get back to your day. Just making sure I didn't reading through the comments, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, I did miss one. Does it happen on the Saturn 3? No Ultra version. Not that I've seen. From what I've seen, it's only the Ultra version has that Linux card in it, and it seems to be related to that exclusively. So as that kind of gets patched away, we should be good to go on the Saturn 3 Ultra. Like I said, that should be coming soon. And if you just use .goo for the time being, you'll never run into it, and you will have a great time with that printer. A different process for big prints or small figurines. There is a difference between big and small prints. It has to do with weight. The weight of a print, so I hollow everything to reduce the weight, but weight and peel force do make things more difficult. The larger the object you're printing, the more that it's going to hold onto those supports over time, and also just the bigger cross-section. Cross-section is that layer being printed at once. If it's tiny, if a tiny cross-section, it's really easy to pull that off of the film. If it's really big, it's a lot of peeling force. It's also a lot of force on the printer. So size, it makes things harder, and it scales up really fast. So for small prints, that's where you want to start with. It's really easy. Miniatures can be really fun and really easy. These kind of act like, a print like this one acts like a bunch of miniatures because it's just a whole bunch of tiny little things, you know, printed independently. I can't remember if I glued this or not. No, I didn't. Yeah, so like an idea, you know, they're just printed as tiny little parts that can just kind of come apart. And that makes it significantly easier to put apart and assemble just because it's going to act like a bunch of minis. But if you're trying to do something like this big on its own, it can be really, really difficult. And so on that one, what you're going to have to do is increase your burn-in time because the higher weight's going to want to pull that off the build plate. And you don't have to recalibrate your normal layers. Those are going to stay the same, big or small. But that's where hollowing and good preparation comes in, and just a little bit more burn-in time and some experience on kind of how to clean and manage and hollow and support. And with that, you should have a good time with it. And last question, and then we'll button it up. Can you recommend a high temperature resin that can be used for models? Yes, Striatech has a high temp resin that can be used for casting, and they also have ones that can be used for molding. Those are very good and very high temps. They will do 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can injection mold right into them. I would say that's more like you're trying to do rapid prototyping. That's where you'd want to go. And then kind of a teaser, the next live stream we're going to do is actually me doing supporting for industrial type 3D printing. There's a lot of stuff out there for miniatures and not so much for that side of it, but I don't think too many people know that on these desktop printers, like the ones I showed you, the number one thing printed is like wargaming miniatures, D&D and Warhammer and those kind of things. That's number one. Number two, you would think would be statues, but it's actually industrial manufacturing is the number two thing printed. So we want to make sure that we have some content for everyone doing those type of prints as well, because they are a little bit different animal than your normal models and miniatures. All right, and that's it for now. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry about the zoom in on the presentation. Like I said, I will share that link out so you can kind of go over it for anyone who couldn't really see what was going on. And with that, thanks for watching and have a good day.